Commander Elena Vasquez stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the gleaming deck of the Galactic Defense Coalition's flagship, the Harmony of Stars. Around her, beings from dozens of different worlds moved with practiced efficiency. The Zenthari, with their crystalline exoskeletons, clicked across the metal floors, their movements precise and calculated. The flowing meridians glided past like living water, their translucent forms shimmering under the artificial lights. Towering Kornak warriors, their thick hides scarred from countless battles, stood guard at strategic points throughout the massive vessel. Elena felt small among them. At barely 5.5 feet tall, with her simple gray uniform and unremarkable human features, she drew little attention from the alien crew members. That was exactly how most of the galaxy preferred it. Humans had only been part of the coalition for 3 years, and in that time, they had been relegated to support roles, logistics, and what the other species politely called administrative assistance. The Kornak saw humans as too small and weak to be effective warriors. The Zenthari considered human technology primitive and their tactical thinking chaotic. The Meridians found human emotional responses to be a liability in combat situations. Even the peaceful Alfari traders thought humans were better suited to managing supplies than fighting wars. Elena had heard it all before. She had graduated top of her class from Earth's military academy, served with distinction in the Titan conflict, and earned commendations for tactical innovation. None of that seemed to matter here. To the galaxy, humans were newcomers who should be grateful for any role at all in the grand cosmic order. "Commander Vasquez?" The voice came from behind her, speaking in the universal translator's flat, mechanical tone. Elena turned to see a Zenthari officer approaching, his crystalline features reflecting the corridor lights. The translator identified him as Sub-Commander Kethrak. "I am to escort you to the briefing chamber." "Thank you, Sub-Commander," Elena replied, following the tall alien through the ship's corridors. The Harmony of Stars was a marvel of engineering, built by a dozen different species working together. The corridors were wide enough to accommodate the massive Kornak, with adjustable atmospheric controls for the various breathing requirements of different species. Gravity fields could be modified in different sections to suit each race's preferences. As they walked, Elena noticed the subtle segregation. Zenthari worked with Zenthari, Meridians flowed together in their own groups, and the Kornak formed their own squads. Each species had developed their own military traditions over thousands of years, and those traditions rarely mixed. The briefing chamber was enormous, with a holographic display system that could project three-dimensional battle scenarios visible from any angle. Representatives from all major coalition species were present. Elena took her place at a small section designated for human personnel, where 3 other human officers sat looking equally out of place. Captain Sarah Chen, the highest-ranking human in the coalition forces, gave Elena a slight nod. Next to her sat Lieutenant Marcus Thompson, a communications specialist, and Major David Park, who handled human logistics coordination. They were the token human presence in a room full of beings who saw them as little more than useful assistants. "Attention, all personnel," announced Admiral Thexvor, a Zenthari whose crystalline form had darkened with age and experience. His voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets across multiple sectors. "We have received intelligence regarding a significant threat to Coalition space." The holographic display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. Red markers indicated hostile forces moving toward Coalition territory. Elena recognized the formation patterns immediately, but she kept her observations to herself for now. "The Skarn Imperium has assembled a massive fleet," Admiral Thexvor continued. "Our intelligence estimates place their numbers at over 2,000 vessels, including 15 of their new Dreadnought-class ships. They are moving toward the Kepler Junction, which, as you know, controls access to 7 major trade routes." A Kornak general named Grimthak spoke up, his voice a low rumble that Elena could feel in her chest. "My warriors are ready for battle, Admiral. The Skarn may outnumber us, but they have never faced a full Kornak assault." "The mathematics do not support optimism," replied Commander Zixara, a meridian whose flowing form had taken on a bluish tint that Elena had learned indicated concern. "Coalition forces number approximately 800 vessels. Even accounting for superior technology, the numerical disadvantage is substantial." Elena studied the display, noting the Skarn fleet composition and movement patterns. She had seen similar formations in Earth's military history databases, and she recognized the strategic thinking behind the deployment. The Skarn were using a classic encirclement strategy, but they were making assumptions about how coalition forces would respond. "What are the current defensive plans?" asked Captain Chen, speaking for the human contingent. Admiral Thexvor's crystalline features shifted in what Elena had learned was the Zenthari equivalent of a frown. "Standard coalition doctrine dictates a layered defense. The Kornak heavy assault ships will form the primary battle line, supported by Zenthari precision strike vessels. Meridian scouts will provide reconnaissance and harassment. The Alfari will coordinate logistics from safe positions." "And human forces?" Major Park asked. "Human vessels will remain in reserve, providing supply coordination and emergency evacuations if necessary," the Admiral replied. The dismissive tone was barely concealed by the translator's neutral voice. Elena felt the familiar frustration building inside her. She had studied every major battle in Coalition history, and she could see patterns that the other species seemed to miss. Each race fought according to their own traditions and strengths, but they rarely adapted their tactics to take advantage of combined capabilities. The Kornak were indeed powerful warriors, but they relied on frontal assaults and overwhelming force. The Zenthari were precise and analytical, but they struggled with rapid adaptation when plans went wrong. The Meridians were excellent scouts and could strike quickly, but they avoided prolonged engagements. Each species had developed tactics that worked for them individually, but they had never learned to fight as a truly integrated force. As the briefing continued, Elena watched the tactical projections. The coalition plan was sound by traditional standards, but it was predictable. The Skarn would expect exactly this type of response because it was how the coalition had fought every previous engagement. Each species would perform their traditional role, and the battle would come down to raw numbers and individual ship capabilities. The Skarn had studied coalition tactics for decades. They knew that Kornak ships would charge straight ahead, that Zenthari vessels would maintain precise formations, and that Meridians would dart around the edges of the battle. The Imperium had developed counters for all of these traditional approaches. Lieutenant Thompson leaned over to Elena and whispered, "Same old strategy. Line up, charge forward, hope for the best." Elena nodded, but her mind was racing. During her studies at Earth's military academy, she had learned about something called combined arms tactics, where different types of units worked together to create effects that none could achieve alone. She had also studied asymmetric warfare, where smaller forces used unexpected strategies to defeat larger opponents. The key insight from human military history was that the most successful battles were won not by following predictable patterns, but by adapting to the specific situation and using creative combinations of available resources. Earth's generals had learned to coordinate infantry, armor, artillery, and air support in ways that multiplied their individual effectiveness. "The Kepler Junction battle will commence in 72 hours, Admiral Thexvor announced. "All squadron commanders will receive detailed tactical assignments within 6 hours. Dismissed." As the various species filed out of the briefing chamber, Elena remained behind, studying the holographic display. Captain Chen noticed and approached her. "What are you thinking, Elena?" Chen asked. "I'm thinking we're about to get ourselves slaughtered if we follow standard doctrine. Elena replied quietly. The Skarn have studied our tactics for years. They know exactly what we're going to do. And what would you suggest instead? Major Park asked, joining the conversation. We're support personnel, remember? Our job is to keep supplies flowing and evacuate the wounded. Elena turned to face her colleagues. What if we weren't just support personnel? What if we could show them a completely different way to fight? Lieutenant Thompson looked skeptical. The Coalition has been fighting wars for thousands of years. You think they missed something? Not missed, Elena said, manipulating the holographic controls to show different formations. They've each perfected their own way of fighting, but they've never really learned to fight together. Each species does their own thing, and they hope it all works out. She highlighted different sections of the Skarn fleet. Look at their formation. They're expecting standard Coalition tactics. Heavy ships in front, support vessels behind, scouts on the flanks. What if we did something completely different? Captain Chen studied the display. What did you have in mind? Elena began manipulating the holographic projection, moving Coalition ship icons into new positions. Instead of organizing by species, what if we organized by function? What if we created mixed unit compositions that could adapt to changing situations? She created a new formation on the display. Imagine a strike group with a Kornak heavy ship for firepower, Zenthari vessels for precision targeting, Meridian scouts for mobility, and human ships for coordination and tactical adaptation. Each group would be self-sufficient, but could work with other groups to create larger effects. Major Park frowned. The other species would never go for it. They've been fighting their own way for millennia. Maybe, Elena said. But what if we could prove it works? What if we could show them something they've never seen before? Captain Chen was quiet for a moment, studying Elena's improvised tactical display. Even if the idea has merit, we don't have the authority to change Coalition doctrine. We're barely tolerated as it is. Elena nodded, understanding the political reality. Humans were the newest members of the Coalition, and they had been assigned support roles for good reasons. They lacked the combat experience of other species, their technology was considered primitive, and their tactical traditions were unknown to their allies. But Elena had spent years studying not just human military history, but the military traditions of all Coalition species. She understood their strengths and weaknesses better than most of them understood each other. More importantly, she had studied battles throughout Earth's history, where smaller, supposedly weaker forces had defeated larger, more powerful enemies through tactical innovation. What if we didn't change Coalition doctrine? Elena asked. What if we just proved that our approach could work? Lieutenant Thompson looked confused. How would we do that? We're not going to be in combat positions. Elena smiled for the first time since arriving on the flagship. Actually, we are going to be in a combat position. We're going to be coordinating supply runs and evacuations, right? That means we'll be moving around the battlefield, in contact with ships from all species. So? Major Park asked. So we'll be in the perfect position to coordinate tactical adjustments in real time, Elena explained. We'll be able to see the whole battle developing, and we'll be in communication with everyone. If we can prove that cross-species coordination works on a small scale, maybe we can convince them to try it on a larger scale. Captain Chen raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious and risky. If we screw up, we'll confirm every negative opinion about human tactical abilities. If we don't try something different, we're going to lose anyway, Elena replied. The Skarn outnumber us more than 2-1, and they've planned their attack around our predictable tactics. Standard Coalition doctrine is going to get a lot of good beings killed. The 4 human officers stood in silence for a moment, contemplating the risks and possibilities. Elena knew she was asking them to gamble their careers, and possibly their lives, on an untested tactical concept. But she also knew that something had to change if the Coalition was going to survive the coming battle. Even if we wanted to try this, Lieutenant Thompson said, how would we convince ships from different species to work together in new ways during the middle of a battle? Elena had been thinking about that problem. We start small. We coordinate supply runs that happen to position ships in mutually supporting formations. We suggest communication protocols that happen to create tactical opportunities. We provide information that helps different species understand what others are doing. She paused, then continued. And when the battle starts going badly for traditional tactics, we offer alternatives that might save lives. Captain Chen sighed. You realize that if this goes wrong, humans will be blamed for the defeat. Our species might be kicked out of the coalition entirely. And if we do nothing and the coalition loses, Elena replied, humans will be blamed for not contributing enough to prevent the defeat. Either way, our reputation is on the line. At least this way, we have a chance to show what we're really capable of. Major Park nodded slowly. It's a hell of a risk. But you're right about one thing. Standard tactics aren't going to work against these numbers. Elena looked at her colleagues, seeing the mixture of fear and determination in their faces. They were all career military officers who had joined the coalition, hoping to prove that humans deserved respect as warriors and tacticians. This might be their only chance to demonstrate that human military thinking could contribute something valuable to galactic defense. So we're agreed? Elena asked. We'll do our assigned jobs, but we'll also look for opportunities to demonstrate integrated tactical coordination. Captain Chen extended her hand, and the others followed suit. We're agreed. But Elena, you need to understand that you're essentially betting the future of human military participation in the coalition on your tactical theories. I understand, Elena replied, shaking hands with her colleagues. But I'd rather bet on human ingenuity than accept that we're only good enough to carry supplies. As they left the briefing chamber, Elena's mind was already working on the tactical challenges ahead. She had 72 hours to develop detailed plans for demonstrating integrated combat tactics while officially serving in a support role. She needed to identify key moments when tactical intervention might be possible, and she needed to prepare contingency plans for multiple battle scenarios. Most importantly, she needed to prove that humans deserve to be treated as equals in the vast community of galactic civilizations. The coming battle would determine not just the fate of the Kepler Junction, but the future of humanity's place among the stars. The Coalition fleet hung in space near the Kepler Junction, waiting for the Skarn Imperium to arrive. Elena stood on the bridge of the human logistics vessel, New Geneva, watching the tactical displays show the precise formations that had become standard Coalition doctrine over centuries of warfare. 3 hours until contact. The Kornak battle line stretched across space like a massive wall of armored fury, their heavy ships bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Behind them, the Zenthari precision strike vessels maintained perfect geometric formations, their crystalline hulls gleaming as their targeting systems calculated firing solutions. On the flanks, Meridian scout ships flowed like schools of fish, ready to dart in and out of combat. Human vessels, maintain position in Sector 7, came Admiral Thexvor's voice over the communication system. Prepare to receive damaged vessels for evacuation and coordinate supply distribution as needed. Elena exchanged glances with Captain Chen, who was commanding the small human fleet from the bridge of Terra's Pride. Their 4 ships had been positioned well behind the main battle line, ready to perform their assigned support functions. To the rest of the coalition, humans were backup dancers in a performance featuring more experienced stars. All human vessels, this is Captain Chen, came the private communication on their encrypted channel. Remember, we perform our assigned duties first. Any tactical innovations are secondary to keeping our ships and crews alive. Elena nodded to Lieutenant Thompson, who was managing communications from the New Geneva. They had spent the past 3 days developing contingency plans and studying the positioning of every ship in the Coalition fleet. Elena had identified 12 key positions where mixed-species coordination could potentially create tactical advantages that none of the traditional approaches could achieve. "Contact in 90 minutes, announced the tactical officer, a young human named Rodriguez who had transferred from Earth's defense forces. "Skarn fleet emerging from hyperspace on schedule." Elena watched the sensors as red dots began appearing on the edge of the display. The Skarn Imperium had arrived in force, exactly as intelligence had predicted. Over 2,000 vessels, arranged in the classic Skarn battle formation that had conquered dozens of star systems. "Impressive," Rodriguez muttered. "They really brought everything they had." Elena studied the enemy formation, noting the details that confirmed her analysis from the briefing. The Skarn were deploying their heaviest ships in a forward formation designed to smash through the Kornak battle line, while faster vessels positioned themselves to exploit any breaches. It was a proven strategy that had worked against Coalition forces multiple times before. "Coalition fleet, this is Admiral Thexvor," the announcement echoed across all frequencies. "All vessels maintain formation. Execute Battle Plan Alpha on my command." Elena felt the familiar frustration as she watched the Coalition fleet begin its traditional deployment. Each species group would advance according to their own tactical doctrine, hoping that individual excellence would somehow combine into victory. The Kornak would charge forward with overwhelming force, the Zenthari would provide precise fire support from calculated positions, and the Meridians would harass enemy flanks. It was exactly what the Skarn expected. Elena could see it in their formation adjustments as they prepared their own counters to traditional Coalition tactics. 30 minutes to contact," Rodriguez reported. "All human vessels report ready for support operations." Elena activated her personal communication unit, connecting directly to Captain Chen. "Sarah, are you seeing what I'm seeing in the Skarn deployment?" "The counter formations? Yeah, I see them. They've studied our tactics extensively." "They're leaving gaps," Elena continued. "Specific vulnerabilities that could be exploited if we had mixed unit coordination. Look at grid reference 774. Elena highlighted the section on her tactical display and transmitted the data to Chen's ship. In that area, Skarn medium cruisers were positioned to counter Kornak heavy ships, but they were vulnerable to the type of precision strike that Zenthari vessels excelled at. However, the Zenthari ships were positioned too far away to take advantage of the opportunity, and the Kornak couldn't see the vulnerability from their position. "I see it," Chen replied. "But what can we do about it? We're not in position to coordinate anything." "Actually, we are," Elena said, pulling up the supply rotation schedule. "In 15 minutes, we're supposed to deliver ammunition supplies to the Zenthari squadron in Sector 4. What if we took a route that happened to pass through the optimal firing position for that vulnerability?" There was a pause before Chen responded. "That's technically within our mission parameters. But Elena, if we start moving ships around without authorization—" "We're not moving combat ships," Elena interrupted. "We're conducting our assigned supply runs. It's not our fault if optimal supply routes happen to create tactical opportunities." Elena switched to a broader communication channel that included all human vessels. "All ships, we've received updated supply requirements from Coalition Command. New delivery routes are being transmitted now." She quickly calculated routes that would position human ships at key coordination points throughout the fleet. The human vessels would appear to be following standard logistics protocols, but they would actually be in position to facilitate communication and coordination between different species ships. "Contact in 10 minutes, Rodriguez announced. "Skarn fleet is assuming attack formation." Elena watched the enemy formation shift into its final configuration. The Skarn had been studying Coalition tactics for years, and their positioning showed that they expected every traditional move the Coalition would make. Heavy Skarn vessels moved to counter Kornak ships. fast interceptors prepared to neutralize Meridian scouts, and their command ships positioned themselves to disrupt Zenthari precision formations. Coalition fleet advanced to combat positions, Admiral Thexvor commanded. The massive coalition fleet began its approach, each species moving in the patterns they had perfected over centuries of warfare. Elena felt her heart racing as she realized that within minutes, thousands of beings would begin killing each other using tactics that were centuries out of date. New Geneva. Begin supply run to Zenthari Squadron 4, Elena announced. Rodriguez, plot a course that takes us through grid 774. That's an unusual route, Commander, Rodriguez observed. More direct paths are available. Space debris field requires navigation around potential hazards, Elena replied, using a standard logistics explanation. It wasn't entirely false. There were debris fields in the area, but they weren't significant enough to require the course adjustment she was requesting. As the New Geneva moved through space, Elena opened communication channels to nearby vessels from different species. Kornak Battlecruiser, Iron Hammer. This is human logistics vessel. New Geneva. We're detecting unusual energy signatures in your projected advance path. Recommend tactical sensor sweep of grid 774. The response came in the grinding voice typical of Kornak warriors. Human vessel, we do not require tactical advice. Maintain your distance from combat operations. Elena had expected that response. The Kornak were proud warriors who rarely took advice from others, especially from species they considered weak. But she had planted the seed of information they might need later. Zenthari Precision Strike Vessel, Crystal Harmony, this is New Geneva, Elena continued. We're transmitting tactical data on enemy formations in Sector 7. Enemy vessels appear vulnerable to precision strikes from specific angles. The Zenthari response was more analytical. Human vessel, we acknowledge your data transmission. However, our current position does not allow engagement of targets in that sector. Understood, Crystal Harmony. We're continuing supply runs in that area. We'll update you on any position changes that might create engagement opportunities. Elena was carefully building a foundation for coordination without explicitly violating coalition command structure. She was providing information and creating opportunities, but leaving tactical decisions to the combat ships themselves. Battle commencing, Rodriguez announced as the first energy beams lanced across space between the approaching fleets. Elena watched the tactical display as the engagement developed exactly as she had feared. Kornak heavy ships charged straight toward the strongest Skarn positions, accepting massive damage in order to close to effective weapon range. Zenthari vessels maintained their formations and fired at maximum range, achieving good accuracy but limited impact due to distance. Meridian scouts darted around the edges of the battle, conducting harassment attacks but avoiding sustained engagement. The Skarn responded with the tactics they had prepared specifically to counter these traditional approaches. Heavy defensive positions absorbed Kornak attacks while concentrating fire to destroy individual ships. Mobile squadrons disrupted Zenthari formations, forcing them to break their precise geometries. Fast interceptors chased down Meridian scouts, preventing them from exploiting vulnerable targets. Coalition casualties mounting, Rodriguez reported. We're losing ships faster than projected. Elena gritted her teeth as she watched good beings die because of predictable tactics. The battle was only 10 minutes old, and already the coalition was being outmaneuvered by an enemy that had studied their every move. New Geneva, this is Captain Chen, came the voice over their private channel. I'm seeing opportunities in Sector 12. Are you ready to try something different? Elena looked at the tactical situation in Sector 12. A group of Kornak ships was being overwhelmed by superior Skarn numbers, while a Zenthari squadron was too far away to provide effective support. However, if someone could coordinate their movements... Terra's pride. Begin emergency supply run to support Kornak ships in Sector 12, Elena announced. We'll coordinate with New Geneva to create optimal delivery patterns. Elena opened communication channels to both the Kornak ships under attack and the distant Zenthari squadron. Kornak squadron leader, this is human logistics coordination. We're observing skarn formations that appear vulnerable to precision strikes. Recommend tactical withdrawal to grid 447. Human, we do not retreat, came the angry response from the Kornak commander. Not retreat. Tactical repositioning to draw enemy into precision strike zone, Elena corrected. Zenthari vessels are moving to support position. Combined firepower could eliminate enemy advantage. Elena switched to the Zenthari frequency. Crystal Harmony. Kornak vessels are moving to position 447. This will create optimal firing angles for precision strikes on skarn heavy cruisers. Recommend advance to position 451. Human vessel, that position is not in our assigned sector, the Zenthari commander replied. Negative, that position is where you'll have optimal fields of fire to support allied vessels under attack, Elena responded. Supply vessels are coordinating ammunition delivery to that position. Elena was stretching the truth about supply delivery, but she was creating a tactical opportunity that could save lives. The key was making each species see how working together could achieve their own tactical objectives better than operating alone. Kornak vessels are moving to new position, Rodriguez observed, and the Zenthari ships are adjusting their formation. Elena watched as the two squadrons unknowingly moved into a mutually supporting formation. When the skarn ships pursued the apparently retreating Kornak vessels, they found themselves caught in a crossfire between heavy Kornak weapons and precise Zenthari targeting. Direct hit on skarn heavy cruiser, Rodriguez announced. Enemy vessel is disabled. Multiple skarn ships destroyed, came another report. Enemy formation in Sector 12 is broken. Elena felt a surge of satisfaction as she watched the first successful demonstration of coordinated multi-species tactics. The Kornak ships had used their mobility to position the enemy, while the Zenthari had provided precision firepower from an optimal position. Neither group could have achieved the same result operating according to their individual tactical doctrines. New Geneva. This is Admiral Thexivor. The communication came from the Coalition flagship. Explain the tactical developments in Sector 12. That engagement did not follow approved battle plans. Elena felt her throat tighten. The Admiral had noticed that something unusual was happening, and now she had to explain how human logistics vessels had somehow been involved in tactical coordination. Admiral, human vessels were conducting supply runs to support engaged friendly forces, Elena replied carefully. In the process of fulfilling logistics requirements, we observed tactical opportunities and transmitted information to appropriate combat vessels. You transmitted tactical recommendations without authorization. The Admiral's crystalline voice carried disapproval. We transmitted observational data regarding enemy formations and friendly positions, Elena corrected. Combat vessels made their own tactical decisions based on available information. There was a pause before Admiral Thexivor responded. Continue with assigned supply operations. Do not exceed your operational authority. Elena knew she was walking a fine line. The Admiral was clearly suspicious about human involvement in tactical coordination, but he couldn't argue with results. The coordinated attack in Sector 12 had been the most successful coalition action of the battle so far. Captain Chen, did you hear that? Elena transmitted on their private channel. Yeah, we're on thin ice. But Elena, look at the overall battle situation. Elena expanded her tactical display to show the entire engagement. The coordinated success in Sector 12 was an isolated bright spot in an otherwise deteriorating situation. Coalition forces were still losing ships faster than they could afford, and the Skarn were systematically exploiting the weaknesses in traditional tactics. We need to do more, Elena said. One successful coordination isn't enough to change the outcome. The Admiral specifically told us not to exceed our authority. Major Park's voice joined the conversation from his ship. He told us to continue with assigned supply operations, Elena replied. What if those supply operations happen to create more opportunities for tactical coordination? Elena began analyzing the battle from a completely different perspective. Instead of seeing the engagement as separate species fighting individually, she started looking for points where coordinated action could multiply effectiveness. She identified 6 areas where better communication between different ship types could create tactical advantages. All human vessels. We have multiple urgent supply requirements, Elena announced. Coordinating delivery routes for maximum efficiency. Over the next 20 minutes, Elena orchestrated what appeared to be routine logistics operations, but was actually an attempt to demonstrate integrated combat tactics on a larger scale. Human ships moved throughout the battle zone, facilitating communication between different species and creating opportunities for coordinated action. In Sector 6, Elena coordinated between Meridian Scouts and Kornak heavy ships to trap a Skarn squadron in a pincer movement. In Sector 14, she helped Zenthari precision vessels and Meridian Scouts create a mobile strike force that could hit enemy formations and withdraw before retaliation. In Sector 3, she coordinated all 3 species to create a layered defense that stopped a major Skarn breakthrough. Coalition fleet casualties decreasing, Rodriguez reported. Enemy advance is slowing. Elena could see the change in the battle's momentum. Where traditional tactics had been failing, coordinated multi-species actions were succeeding. Ships that had been fighting as separate forces were beginning to work together, creating combat effects that none of them could achieve alone. But the Skarn were adapting too. Elena watched as enemy formations began adjusting to counter the unexpected coordination they were encountering. The Imperium's tactical flexibility was one reason they had been so successful against the Coalition in previous battles. Skarn fleet is implementing Formation Delta 7, Rodriguez observed. They're adapting to our tactical changes. Elena realized that her small-scale coordinations had been successful, but they weren't enough to win the battle. The Skarn still outnumbered Coalition forces significantly, and they were beginning to develop counters to the new tactics. She needed something bigger, something that would demonstrate the full potential of integrated galactic combat tactics. Elena studied the overall battle situation, looking for an opportunity to coordinate not just individual squadrons, but entire fleet formations. She needed to show that human tactical thinking could transform how the galaxy fought wars. That's when she saw it. The Skarn were preparing a massive assault on the Coalition Center, concentrating over 300 ships for a decisive breakthrough. Traditional Coalition tactics would meet that assault head-on, accepting heavy casualties in hopes of stopping the advance. But what if they didn't meet it head-on? What if the entire Coalition fleet worked together to create a tactical response that no single species could execute alone? Elena opened communication channels to every ship in the Coalition fleet. Elena took a deep breath as she prepared to either save the Coalition fleet or destroy her military career. The Skarn were massing over 300 ships for a concentrated assault on the Coalition Center, and traditional defensive tactics would result in massive casualties with little chance of success. All Coalition vessels, this is human logistics coordination, Elena announced on the general fleet frequency. We are observing significant enemy formation changes that create tactical opportunities. Recommend immediate fleet-wide coordination protocol. Human vessel, you are not authorized to issue tactical recommendations to the entire fleet. Admiral Thexavor's voice cut across the communication system. His crystalline tone carried more than disapproval now. It carried warning. Elena knew she was about to cross a line that might result in court-martial, but she also knew that following traditional tactics would result in defeat. She had studied every major coalition battle in the past century, and she understood something that the galaxy's military leaders seemed to have forgotten. Winning wars required adapting to new realities, not just perfecting old methods. Admiral, with respect, the enemy is implementing Formation Delta 7 with concentrated assault positioning, Elena replied. Coalition forces can achieve tactical superiority through coordinated cross-species formations. Request permission to demonstrate integrated tactical coordination. Permission denied, Admiral Thexavor responded immediately. All vessels will maintain standard formation and execute approved tactical doctrine. Elena looked at the tactical display showing the approaching Skarn assault force. In approximately 8 minutes, 300 enemy vessels would smash into the coalition center. The Kornak heavy ships would meet them head-on, accepting massive casualties while trying to stop the breakthrough. Zenthari precision vessels would provide fire support from fixed positions, limiting their effectiveness as the battle became fluid. Meridian scouts would be forced to withdraw or be destroyed by the concentrated enemy advance. It was exactly what had happened in a dozen previous coalition defeats, and it would happen again unless someone tried something different. Elena opened the private communication channel to her fellow human officers. Sarah, David, Marcus, this is it. We can follow orders and watch the fleet get destroyed, or we can prove that human tactical thinking deserves respect. Elena, if we disobey direct orders from Admiral Thexavor, our military careers are over, Captain Chen replied. Human participation in coalition defense might be over. If we don't act, coalition defense might be over completely, Elena responded. Look at the tactical projections. Traditional formations can't stop that assault. Major Park's voice joined the conversation. What exactly are you proposing? Elena had been developing the concept during the smaller coordination successes earlier in the battle. Human military history was filled with examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through tactical innovation, speed, and unpredictable coordination. The key was making the enemy fight the battle you wanted, not the battle they expected. Instead of meeting their concentrated assault with our concentrated defense, we scatter our formations and attack from multiple directions simultaneously, Elena explained. Each mixed species group becomes a mobile strike force that can hit different targets and withdraw before the enemy can respond. That goes against every principle of coalition military doctrine, Lieutenant Thompson observed. Exactly, Elena replied. That's why it might work. The Skarn have studied our doctrine for decades. They know exactly how we fight, and they've developed perfect counters, but they've never faced truly integrated multi-species tactics. Elena transmitted detailed tactical projections to the other human ships. Her plan called for reorganizing the entire coalition fleet into mixed-species strike groups, each combining the strengths of different species while covering their weaknesses. Kornak heavy ships would provide firepower and durability. Zenthari vessels would deliver precision strikes and tactical analysis. Meridian scouts would provide mobility and reconnaissance, and human ships would coordinate real-time tactical adaptation. It's ambitious, Captain Chen said after reviewing the projections. But Elena, we don't have the authority to reorganize the entire fleet, and even if we did, the other species would never agree to abandon their traditional formations. Elena watched the countdown timer showing 6 minutes until the Skarn assault reached coalition lines. She knew that her colleagues were right about the political and practical obstacles, but she also knew that sometimes military necessity had to override military protocol. What if we don't ask permission? Elena asked quietly. What if we just start coordinating tactical movements and let results speak for themselves? The silence on the private channel stretched for nearly 30 seconds before Captain Chen responded. Elena, you're talking about conducting unauthorized fleet coordination in the middle of a major battle. If this fails, it won't just be our careers. The entire human species could be blamed for a coalition defeat. And if we do nothing, and the coalition loses anyway, humans will be blamed for not contributing enough to prevent defeat, Elena replied. At least this way. We're failing while trying to save lives instead of failing while following orders that everyone knows won't work. Elena made her decision. She switched to the general coalition frequency and began transmitting tactical data to specific ships throughout the fleet. Kornak Squadron 7, Meridian Scout Group 3, and Zenthari Precision Vessels in Sector 9. This is Human Logistics Coordination. Tactical analysis indicates optimal strike formation at grid reference 227. Enemy vulnerable to coordinated multi-vector assault. Human vessel. Cease unauthorized tactical communications. Admiral Thexavor commanded. Elena ignored the Admiral and continued transmitting. Meridian Scouts report enemy formation gaps. Recommend Kornak advance to position 235, while Zenthari vessels provide precision fire support from position 241. Coordinated strike in 90 seconds. Admiral Thexvor's voice became more insistent. Human vessels, you are ordered to cease tactical communications immediately. Security forces are being dispatched to your position. Elena felt her heart pounding, but she continued coordinating tactical movements. She was committed now, and the only way forward was to prove that integrated tactics could work. All vessels in Strike Group Alpha, commence coordinated advance. Meridian Scouts lead, followed by Kornak Heavy Assault, with Zenthari Precision support. Target enemy formations at grid 227. For a moment, Elena thought her plan would fail before it began. The ships from different species had received her coordination instructions, but they hadn't moved. Each crew was probably debating whether to follow unauthorized tactical orders from a human logistics vessel. Then the Meridian Scouts began moving. Meridian Scout Group 3 acknowledging tactical coordination, came the flowing voice of Commander Zixara over the communication system, commencing advance to designated position. Elena felt a surge of hope as Kornak and Zenthari vessels also began moving into coordinated formations. Some ship commanders were willing to try something different, even if it meant following instructions from a human. Strike Group Alpha engaged, Rodriguez reported. Coordinated assault is commencing. Elena watched the tactical display as ships from 3 different species worked together in ways they had never attempted before. Meridian Scouts darted forward to identify enemy weak points, transmitting target data to Kornak heavy ships that advanced with overwhelming firepower, while Zenthari vessels provided precise fire support from optimal positions. The result was devastating for the Skarn forces. The coordinated multi-species assault hit enemy formations from unexpected angles, using combined tactics that no single species could execute alone. Skarn ships that had positioned themselves to counter traditional coalition attacks found themselves overwhelmed by adaptive coordinated strikes. Enemy casualties mounting in Sector 2, Rodriguez announced. Strike Group Alpha has eliminated 7 Skarn vessels with minimal coalition losses. Elena expanded her coordination efforts, transmitting tactical instructions to ships throughout the coalition fleet. Strike Group Beta, commence flanking maneuver on enemy formation in Sector 4. Zenthari vessels advance to position 339 for precision targeting, while Kornak ships execute tactical feint to position 341. More coalition ships began responding to her coordination, as commanders saw the success that integrated tactics were achieving. Traditional species boundaries were breaking down as tactical necessity forced cooperation. Strike Group Gamma, coordinate defensive positions against enemy breakthrough attempt in Sector 6, Elena continued. Meridian mobility, Kornak firepower, Zenthari precision. Create layered defense with mutual fire support. Admiral Thexvor's voice cut across the communications again. All vessels, disregard unauthorized tactical instructions from human logistics vessels, maintain approved formations and execute standard combat doctrine. But Elena could see that many ship commanders were ignoring the Admiral's orders. The success of coordinated tactics was becoming obvious to everyone in the fleet, and experienced combat veterans were choosing tactical effectiveness over protocol compliance. Commander Grimthak's deep voice joined the communications. Human coordination is achieving superior results. Kornak Battle Group 7 will continue following integrated tactical instructions. Commander Zixara's flowing tones added agreement. Meridian Scouts confirm effectiveness of multi-species coordination. We will maintain integrated formation protocols. Even some Zenthari commanders were openly supporting the new tactics. Zenthari Precision Squadron 4 acknowledges superior tactical coordination. Human logistics analysis provides enhanced targeting effectiveness. Elena realized that she had accomplished something unprecedented in Coalition military history. For the first time, ships from different species were choosing to work together based on tactical merit rather than traditional doctrine. The artificial barriers between different military traditions were breaking down in the face of demonstrated effectiveness. Admiral Thexvor, this is Commander Vasquez, Elena announced, using her name and rank for the first time in the battle. Respectfully request permission to continue coordinating integrated tactical operations. Current coordination protocols are achieving superior combat effectiveness. The silence from the flagship stretched for nearly a minute while Admiral Thexvor considered his response. Elena could imagine the debate taking place on the bridge as tactical officers reported the success of integrated formations, while protocol officers argued about unauthorized command structures. Finally, the Admiral's voice returned. Commander Vasquez, your actions violate every principle of coalition command structure. However, tactical results indicate effectiveness. You have temporary authorization to continue coordination pending post-battle review. Elena felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she knew the battle was far from over. The Skarn were adapting to the new tactics, and their massive numerical advantage still posed a serious threat. She needed to push the integrated approach even further. All coalition vessels, this is tactical coordination, Elena announced. Implementing fleet-wide integrated formation protocol. All ships will be assigned to mixed species strike groups for optimal tactical effectiveness. Elena began the complex task of reorganizing the entire coalition fleet in the middle of active combat. Instead of traditional species-based formations, she created tactical units that combined different capabilities for specific mission requirements. Heavy assault groups paired Kornak firepower with Zenthari precision and Meridian mobility. Defensive formations used layered capabilities to create mutual support networks. Reconnaissance groups combined Meridian speed with human coordination and Zenthari analysis. The transformation was remarkable to watch. Ships that had been fighting as separate species forces began working together as integrated tactical units. Communication protocols improved as different species learned to share information in real time. Tactical flexibility increased as mixed formations could adapt to changing situations faster than traditional single-species groups. Enemy assault formation is breaking up, Rodriguez reported. Skarn concentrated attack is being disrupted by coordinated coalition response. Elena could see the change in the battle's dynamics. The Skarn had prepared their assault to counter traditional coalition tactics, but integrated formations created tactical challenges they hadn't anticipated. Their concentrated assault was being met not by a static defense, but by mobile strike groups that could hit from multiple directions and withdraw before retaliation. Skarn command vessel is signaling retreat, came an announcement from the flagship. Enemy forces are beginning withdrawal from coalition space. Elena stared at the tactical display in amazement. The integration of different species' tactical capabilities had not just stopped the Skarn assault, it had forced the enemy to retreat entirely. For the first time in coalition history, human tactical innovation had contributed to a major military victory. All ships, cease pursuit, Admiral Thexvor ordered. Maintain defensive positions and assess damage. As the battle ended, Elena realized that something fundamental had changed in galactic warfare. The artificial barriers between different species' military traditions had been broken, and the galaxy had seen what was possible when diverse capabilities worked together toward common goals. Captain Chen's voice came over the private communication channel. Elena, what you've accomplished here is going to change everything. Not just military tactics, but the entire relationship between species in the coalition. Elena nodded, understanding the broader implications of what had happened. The success of integrated tactics had demonstrated that human military thinking could contribute something valuable to galactic defense. But it had also shown that cooperation was more effective than separation for all coalition species. Commander Vasquez, report to the flagship for debriefing, Admiral Thexvor commanded. All human vessels are to accompany the Harmony of Stars for tactical review. Elena knew that the real test was just beginning. The battle had been won, but now she would have to defend her actions before coalition leadership and convince them that integrated tactics should become standard doctrine rather than a one-time innovation. 3 days later, Elena stood before the full Coalition Defense Council in the Great Assembly Chamber of the Harmony of Stars. Representatives from all member species were present, their various forms creating a diverse assembly that reflected the galaxy's biological and cultural diversity. Admiral Thexvor spoke first, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights. The defense of Kepler Junction represents the first major coalition victory against Skarn forces in 12 engagements. However, this victory was achieved through tactics that violated established military doctrine and command structure. Elena waited, knowing that her future and possibly the future of human participation in coalition defense hung on how she defended her actions. Commander Vasquez, Admiral Thexvor continued, you are charged with disobeying direct orders, implementing unauthorized tactical coordination, and disrupting established command protocols. How do you respond to these charges? Elena stood at attention, looking out at the assembly of beings who represented dozens of different worlds and military traditions. Admiral, I respond that tactical innovation was necessary to prevent coalition defeat. Traditional doctrine was insufficient to counter enemy numerical superiority and strategic preparation. General Grimthak spoke next, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. Human tactics achieved unprecedented coordination between Kornak, Zenthari, and Meridian forces. Battle effectiveness increased by measurable factors. Kornak warriors support continuation of integrated tactical protocols. Commander Zixara's flowing form shifted to a color Elena had learned indicated strong agreement. Meridian analysis confirms superior tactical outcomes through multi-species coordination. Human tactical thinking provided perspectives that individual species traditions could not achieve. Elena was surprised to hear support from the same species representatives who had initially dismissed human military capabilities. The success of integrated tactics had changed their perceptions about what was possible when different approaches worked together. The question before this council, Admiral Thexvor announced, is whether the tactical innovations demonstrated at Kepler Junction should be incorporated into official coalition military doctrine. Elena realized that the debate was no longer about punishment for her actions, but about whether the galaxy was ready to adopt new ways of fighting wars. The success of integrated tactics had proven their effectiveness, but institutional change was always difficult. The debate continued for several hours as representatives discussed the implications of adopting multi-species tactical coordination. Some argued that traditional methods had served their species well for millennia, while others pointed out that those traditional methods had also led to repeated defeats against adaptive enemies. Finally, Admiral Thexvor called for a formal vote. All in favor of adopting integrated multi-species tactical coordination as official coalition doctrine. Elena watched as representatives from different species considered their decision. The crystalline Zenthari, the flowing Meridians, the massive Kornak, and dozens of other species were voting on whether to abandon traditions that had defined their military identity for thousands of years. The vote was unanimous. Commander Vasquez, Admiral Thexvor announced, you are hereby appointed to the position of Coalition Tactical Coordination Director, with authority to develop and implement integrated combat doctrine for all coalition forces. Elena felt a surge of emotions as she realized what had been accomplished. Not only had she proven that humans deserved respect as tactical innovators, but she had also helped create a new model for cooperation that could strengthen the entire coalition. 6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Coalition Tactical Training Center, watching mixed-species crews practice the coordination techniques that had become standard throughout Coalition space. Kornak warriors worked alongside Zenthari analysts and Meridian scouts, learning to combine their unique capabilities into something greater than the sum of their parts. The integrated tactical approach had been tested in dozens of subsequent engagements, and the results had consistently favored coalition forces. More importantly, the cooperation required for effective integration had begun to break down barriers between species in areas beyond military operations. Captain Chen joined Elena at the observation window, watching the training exercises below. "You know, when you first proposed coordinated tactics, I thought you were risking our entire future in coalition space." "I was," Elena replied. "But I realized that playing it safe was actually the bigger risk. If humans had remained in support roles, we would have been blamed for not contributing enough when the coalition started losing wars." Elena watched as a mixed crew successfully executed a complex tactical maneuver that would have been impossible for any single species to perform. The human coordination specialist worked with Kornak firepower experts, Zenthari precision analysts, and Meridian mobility specialists to create a tactical response that drew on the strengths of all participants. "The interesting thing," Elena continued, "is that integrated tactics didn't just help humans prove their worth. They helped every species become more effective by learning from each other's approaches." Below them, Elena could see the future of galactic defense taking shape. Species that had fought separately for millennia were learning to fight together, creating tactical capabilities that no individual tradition could achieve. The artificial boundaries between different military cultures were being replaced by shared commitment to protecting coalition space and values. Elena's tactical innovation had transformed more than just military doctrine. It had demonstrated that the galaxy's greatest strength was not the individual excellence of its member species, but their capacity to work together toward common goals. The human tactic that had saved the coalition at Kepler Junction had become a model for cooperation that was reshaping galactic civilization itself. As Elena watched the training exercises continue, she realized that the most important lesson wasn't about tactics or strategy. It was about the power of bringing diverse perspectives together and creating something greater than any individual contribution. The galaxy had learned that true strength came not from perfecting separate traditions, but from combining different capabilities in pursuit of shared objectives. The transformation that had begun with a desperate attempt to save a single battle had evolved into a new model for how diverse civilizations could work together. Elena's tactical innovations had proven that humans deserved respect as strategic thinkers, but more importantly, they had shown that cooperation was always more powerful than separation. In the years that followed, the integrated tactical approach would spread beyond military applications to influence diplomacy, trade, and scientific cooperation throughout coalition space. The human tactic that had transformed galactic combat had also transformed galactic civilization, creating a model of cooperation that would define the galaxy's future for generations to come.